Julian, what's going on?
My laptop's under, so my desk looks like this.
Ah.
And if I put it under that part, it,
Okay.
like, you know, the ceiling blocks the camera. By the way, Lara,
Yes?
have I seen you recently?
What do you mean?
Okay, never mind. So, I'm streaming on Twitch, right?
Oh.
And
Right.
there's someone whose username is Contrafunctor, and I thought that was you. But then
No,
yesterday
it's
they
not
said
me.
it was not you, and I was really confused.
It's not me.
Oh!
Sorry. What time was this at?
Yesterday at like 5 o'clock my time.
Yeah, okay, that's like in the night.
Oh my god. So like the last time they showed up, they said they liked math and went to sleep at around this hour. And I was like, oh, is it Lara? And they said, yeah. But maybe they like misheard me or something. So I don't know who it is.
It wasn't me, sorry.
Another Lara, and she just went to sleep at a weird time.
And
It
likes
could be
math.
another Lara. Who knows?
not-
Apparently there are many of us.
Well, it's not Lara Villanueva, right? Because she wouldn't go to sleep at that time. I was so
I don't know.
confused. Okay.
I don't have anything.
Okay,
It's so
whatever.
weird to hear such a like relatively mundane conversation with this background music.
Oh.
Really weird juxtaposition.
You know what's also fun is hearing that piece right after listening to the entirety of the Turangalila Symphony again.
Ooh, good
Is that what
shit.
you've been doing?
That is what I've been doing. I have a seminar on it on Sunday.
Ooh. I took a Messiaen class a while ago, and it was lots of fun. I watched the entirety of St. Francis.
Nice.
Not
Ooh.
all in order. I watched it a little out of order, but I did watch the whole thing.
I mean, our seminars are basically just whatever pieces my professor wants to talk about. And this time it's the Turangalila Symphony. Last time it was Lontano, and the time before that it was this Wolfgang Riem piece, which is also almost an hour long.
Who's Lontana?
Oh, Ligeti.
Oh,
That
Oh,
one's
that's fine.
like only like 10 minutes. Well, 15-ish. 10 to 15.
the score to Ragalila is so large, but also it's not printed on very big paper, so it like is really hard to read. They had a copy in the library at my school.
Oh, nice. I was just like listening to it with a score video.
It's so expensive, I think, too, to buy it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I kind of noticed.
I think I scanned one of the movements as a PDF, though.
Oh, nice.
Do we have only 2 groups represented? Or 3?
Yeah, and my group
Two.
hasn't really started doing technology yet. I just wanted to say hi and see if anyone had any questions.
3 of the
Do you
people here
know-
are from my group.
What?
Oh, just 3
trained
of the...
people?
There's 3 people
Yeah.
from our group.
Yeah,
That
three
keeps
people from ours,
happening.
too.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Hi, Zach.
So, I guess we won't have every group represented probably,
Hi.
but that's okay. We were kind of thinking
Always
you
follow
could
up with people.
give like a little bit of a introduction to what your okay, we're up to 4 different groups, so we're getting there. Like give a little bit of an introduction of what your project is going to be, and then like what tech you expect to be using, and what an idea of what sort of, and I guess if you know whether or not you need help with any of the stuff, but then we can, like, it can be pretty open, but I thought that'd be a good place to start.
Does group 1 want to start?
I guess.
Yeah, group 1. Woo!
Can't believe we named them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right now, our Slack channel chat is called Project Storytime.
Nice. Ours is just
nice.
vague narrative thing.
I think you're the train group. Tabes, you're muted.
Okay.
Who's that?
Vague narrative thing is also what I have written at the top of
Ah, nice.
my compositional sketch pad.
Good. I say chew, you say chew. Chew,
Chew.
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 Nice, okay.
Choo
So
choo,
group-
motherfucker.
So group 1 is doing a story type thing. So far, I think we've landed on a story concept, which is the idea of a deal with the devil. That's the plan. Caitlin, who isn't here today, had this really interesting idea where we might start with the acoustic sounds only, and then like introduce electronic sounds as the piece goes on and build up into something. And I guess the part of the narrative where the deal is made and in action would be like full of these electronic sounds or something. And then the ending, we're not quite sure yet, but we'll find out. As for technology, I am not very experienced. I think Caitlin has experience doing electronic stuff more than other members of our group do. But for me, it's just like, Reaper. And I also did the Super Collider tutorial with which I can now make a wah sound, but that's about it.
It's a pretty, I will say, for anyone who's messing around with Super Collider, definitely the learning curve is a little bit of an, unyielding barrier at which you have to throw yourself until you get above that sort of like bleeps and bloops level, and then it's like really, really gratifying. But in the beginning, it can be really like, why am I spending so much time doing this thing?
I don't know if I'll be able to rise above the bleeps and bloops level in the next 3 weeks, but I did learn Lily Pond. I feel like if I can learn that, I can learn anything.
It's
But
actually probably easier in some ways than
Really? Okay.
Lily Pond. I mean, that's such a unique syntax and everything. It's a little bit weird. So yeah, because your scores on Lily Pond look great. So by that logic, if you spend a little more time in Super Collider, you're
Wow, thanks.
One thing that might be fun is instead of just doing like synthesis based stuff, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do in Super Collider with samples too, or with live input. And if you're already starting with input that's more interesting and harmonically rich and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily require as much coding to get to textures that are kind of cool. So like there's the different objects that let you record sound into buffers and then play it back or do stuff to it. So you could do that with samples, or you could do that with live input, and that can be really fun. So I would definitely recommend checking that out too.
Nice. Yeah. Caitlin has some tech knowledge, and I think her study, she's getting a PhD in informatics. So she showed us this like funky thing she did with like music and notes and like visualizing the notes as they go around or something. So unfortunately she's not here today, but I think she'll have cool stuff that we can present coolly.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to, presume as far as the aesthetics of that project go, but it seems to me like one of the main things that might be worth addressing at some point is like how much the electronic and the acoustic sounds should or should not sort of like intermingle, in the sense of obviously you might kind of composite them, but whether you want them to remain sounding like very clearly acoustic, very clearly electric as a sort of counterpoint, or whether you want to work on one or both to make them sound more kind of integrated, because definitely there's a lot of stuff that could be done to do that if that was a direction that people wanted to go in.
Yeah. Do you know Soldier's Tale by Stravinsky?
Mm-hmm.
In that piece, the drums are the devil. The instrumentation to character or concept, like Link is not like super strong, but he is on record saying the drums are the devil. At least in like the very end of that show, it's very, very obvious. I don't know if we want to say the electronics are the devil, like because we're not, Luddites, but I think there's a lot of potential in like what we can tie electronic sounds to diegetically or like narratively. We're not interested, at least I'm not interested in like an evil devil. I was more interested in like a chaotic neutral devil, because there's enough evil to, there's enough evil to reckon with from ordinary people. I'm more interested in ordinary villains, but the idea of a supernatural being that can grant wishes, just not being evil, and instead being like like a trickster, like Loki or something, is cool.
Isn't that more like, that sounds almost like a genie?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
If it can grant wishes, I don't know.
When I initially suggested the deal with the devil theme, I didn't say it had to be a devil. per se. So
Deal with a spiritual being of unknown moral compass.
Anyway, that's group one, I guess. Stacy,
Cool.
did you have anything you wanted to say?
I think I really like the idea that Caitlin had where maybe we start with acoustic instruments and they slowly degrade and we distort them. But having very minimal logic skills, I'm hoping that someone else in our group is able to do that. So, but I love the idea if we're able to do sampling. Yeah, I really think it's just an interesting thing to explore how we can characterize acoustic and electronic sounds and play with them.
One thing that could be cool, again, not to insert opinions into this, but just hearing you talk about that, another thing that could be cool if the idea is to have sounds which are electronic, but not necessarily stereotypically electronic, and in the sense of, you know, like square waves and stuff. You could also record material that's acoustic that is to remain only acoustic, and then record other material that's acoustic but that you're going to process so heavily that for all intents and purposes it becomes electronic. And then through that method you also then have like much more granular control over like sort of fading from one into the other, if you know what I mean. Because like, let's say you play a bowed string instrument and you one texture you have is like, you know, a lot of harmonic distortion and reverb and some sort of stereophonic effect and maybe pitch shifting it or whatever. Like you could introduce those elements over time or not all at the same time, and then it would create a much more kind of like organic transformation between the sounds. Because definitely like matching up an acoustic sound to a purely electronic sound could be a little bit challenging. Again, if that's the goal, or if there's stuff that's totally different, you could always just juxtapose it if that's the idea.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I was just thinking of, since I'm sort of a newbie at this, of just recording myself humming and seeing how the different ways I could distort that.
Definitely. Yeah, just off the top of my head, some of the main, oh yeah, that's a good point that Daniel just made too. Yeah, because some of this could be done live also in theory, but yeah, that's a choice, creative choice, I suppose, that's separate from the other stuff, but, or part of the other stuff. Yeah, just as a sort of jumping off point, maybe the stuff that comes to my mind, at least, that would be relatively easy to implement, but that would make sounds that are really weird and cool, would be to use some sort of like overdrive or harmonic distortion. That's usually pretty easy to apply with any normal, you know, workstation. And then that would be as opposed to something more like you know, bit crushing or like a lo-fi sort of thing that like deliberately throws out data to make it sound, you know, like crunchier and distorted in a more inharmonic way, which could also be cool, but it's like a really different sound. So like both those forms of distortion. And then reverb, definitely. Pitch shifting. So whether that's done by like a algorithmic, you know, pitch shifter where like you keep the duration the same, but you change the pitch. You know what I mean? That there are ways to do that, but then the easiest way would be to just play the thing back, like change the rate. If you have a sample, just play it back, you know, 25% the original speed or whatever, and the pitch will shift accordingly. But then that's more of like a broad stroke, but that's an easy way to quickly play around to get some cool sounds. And then granular synthesis stuff too. I'm sure there's plugins. I'm not sure, you know, like in Ableton Live, there's stuff built in. In Logic, I haven't used Logic in many years, so I don't know off the top of my head. You might need to find something, you know, online, but some plugin that lets you do weird granular stuff where you feed in a sample of yourself humming, and you take a little snippet of it and turn that into a texture by looping it with like in and out points that are not fixed so that it's not obvious, that you create like a cloud sort of text, that kind of stuff could be really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Cool.
Yeah.
Those are all amazing ideas.
I'm just trying to think of things that will change like the timbre or the pitch, or like really concretely change the sound, because obviously there's other stuff you could do with like delay or panning effects, which wouldn't happen really normally with an acoustic instrument that would sound sort of electronic, but those aren't inherently electronic the way that applying a sort of transformation to the sound itself would be, if that makes sense. That was my logic. Oh, that's great, Laura and Amanda. Oh yeah, Paul's stretch. I forgot about that. That's still around, I guess, right? Yeah.
I used Paul Stretch in my first project.
I wonder where Paul is right now.
Being stretched to infinity.
Stretched. Yeah, that's a really cool thing. Oh yeah, Spear, of course. Yeah, that sounds like a really awesome project though. Did you guys have any other technical thoughts on it that you wanted to bring up, or? No pressure.
I think we're still in the process of kind of trying to pace everything out about how it's going to look. We've kind of decided on the narrative, and I think we're going to flesh that out sometime this weekend, and then we're going to start maybe dividing. Once we have our storyline fleshed out, we can start dividing it into sections, or then we'll be sort of personally responsible for certain parts of the narrative.
Yeah, definitely. And later on, if you guys end up doing some, sample textures, just, playing around and export some little examples of stuff. If you would like to send anything to me and just get some feedback, I'd be happy to listen. So
That would be awesome. Thank you.
anyone else in another group, I guess, have project 2 technical questions, concerns, ideas, or anything?
I think
another
Peter and
group.
Shoshana were thinking that the groups would like just kind of introduce their projects to Luke. So maybe if you don't even have a question, it'd be good just to say what your project is about.
Yeah, that's true. If there are some representatives from any of the other ones. I guess I don't know what Dan and Isabel wanted to say about theirs.
Do either of you want to go, or do you want me to go, or like?
Feel free. It's always fun to have different people be the describer.
Okay. I mean, I guess vague narrative thing is a good place to start. Also trains. So, we basically came to the conclusion that like all of us have experience in being ungrounded in a single place in some way, and we all kind of move around a lot. So we're doing something with trains and the idea of like moving around. And we were thinking, let's see. I'm gonna yes. Right. So we were looking at some poems, we were looking at how to combine acoustic and electronic sounds, but like more like field recorded sounds versus like distorted field recorded sounds, if that makes sense. And then ideas of having like several different things moving in and out of each other. Yeah.
One
Basically.
idea that I had very recently that I haven't even mentioned to you and Shannon and Laura yet, and Tyler, wherever they are, is that like I can almost imagine this being kind of a whatever our final thing. I can sort of imagine it being a collection of several different types of media objects that are not in any particular order. Like some is video, some is audio, some is both. You could
It would
have,
be cool to have like a surreal thing where they like interact momentarily and like mess with each other.
yeah. Or like there could be something where, I
Um,
don't know, something that the person has to read or something. Like,
mm,
I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud and throwing things at the wall
yeah.
to see what sticks.
Did you all get the video I put up?
I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but yes.
Well, it was just like me walking around because we were going to do something with videos of present day situations and like photos of past situations.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're like gradually assembling something.
That reminds me, Peter mentioned that some people are thinking about doing a video component, and I'm also happy to go over some video related stuff, in terms of like editing or manipulating colors and things like that, if anyone wants to go down that path at some point.
Cool, thanks.
I seem to be the only representative of my group here, so I could quickly describe it just so you're updated, Luke. So me, Duck, Clarissa, Alexa, and Ahmed are doing a multimedia art variant of the game Foldy Foldy Draw Draw, also known as Telephone Pictionary or several other names. The component that we're working on collaboratively is the procedure that we will use to create art inspired by others' art in a sort of telephone chain, and then combine that art in various ways later, so that like visual and audio elements are superimposed. So I can't really say what tech needs we'll have exactly. I, for one, don't know yet if I will be working in electronics programs or if I'll be doing entirely acoustic stuff, but we will keep you updated.
Sounds like that'll be fun.
Yes, this is actually an interesting point that Amanda brought up. Is the Foldy Foldy Draw Draw concept, is it exactly like an Exquisite Corpse, or are each of the modules made completely separate from each other until the final product?
So kind of neither of those things. The concept of Foldy Foldy Draw Draw and how it changes, or how it's different from Exquisite Corpse, is with Exquisite Corpse you're continuing on to I'm sorry, I'm tired today. Continuing from a little section of a drawing that you can still see. Whereas with Foldy Foldy Draw Draw, the drawing is interpreted as words, and then another drawing is produced from those words. So in our case, well, we're going to have a limited amount of mediums that each person can choose from, and they will see the whole product of the previous person in the sequence. But at this point, we're thinking no other parts of the sequence, just the previous part, and they have to kind of reinterpret that, sort of using the other person's rendition as the score in the moment. And yeah, so that's how it's different than like an Exquisite Corpse piece where there's like a few notes on a page that you continue from. Instead, like you're seeing someone else's whole rendition, but probably in a different art form than the one that you're about to interpret it as.
I feel like the tech questions for that will come in a couple of different places, like for like how you present it is probably one big question, as well as like how you create it individually or whatever.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe it's a little premature, but if the idea is that having reached the final stage of that process for each person, if everything is going to be combined into a whole, that definitely seems like there's a lot of potential ways of doing that which is awesome. But
Yeah, we're still working out the kinks on how things will be ultimately recombined. First, we need to test play the initial concept, but it's definitely going to be presented not horizontally, but also with some vertical superposition of parts.
awesome.
I could describe my group's thing now, since it seems like I'm also the only person here. So we don't have a group name yet. It's myself, Lily Desmond, Lucy Hayden, and Osaye. So we haven't actually all met yet. And I'm sorry, my camera isn't working at the moment. I don't know what's going on. So, but I'll get that working next time. But our idea is generally like we want to do something narrative as well. We haven't quite worked it all out yet since we haven't been able to get together. But we know that we want to do something based on the Tithonius myth. If you're not familiar with it, it's like like a lot of it has to do with some madness. Like there's some of the myth that have him endlessly babbling in a room by himself as an increasingly old and decrepit man. And we could find an interesting way to make that turn into sort of like a, you know, like Alvin Lucier's I'm sitting in a room kind of project. Kind of, it could be like process music, but it doesn't have to be, but something of that ilk. And that's kind of the direction that we're going in right now. And we also have some like inspiration from, you know, from different like art pieces, like the vases and stuff from that show pieces of the myth, like images of the myth. We could use that for some of the video. That's sort of the direction we're going in right now.
Awesome.
And like I have some experience with Audacity,
Mhm.
which is really great for really stretching sound as far as it will go. I'm not sure, it might be interesting to like literally write something in to the sound, like, and see what happens. Like write something into the actual sound waves, basically. Or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We could see what happens.
Can be worth messing around with for sure. Yeah. And also just on that sort of Alvin Lucier note, to do what he did in I'm Sitting in a Room acoustically is a very particular process, but one of the luxuries of a computer-based environment for manipulating sounds is that you can do a lot of really interesting like re-recording things much more easily than what he did for that piece. So that would definitely be worth experimenting with. I think you could do some really interesting things, you know, once you take recording. If you have some sort of like iterative process where you decide on some various stages of processing that you like, you know, it's very easy to apply those and then take the result and then apply that to the same processing, whatever, you know, you choose to do. And it's pretty fun to experiment with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna try to recreate his process. That was really complicated. I was gonna maybe do it artificially somehow. It would take a lot less time.
Yeah, but the basic process is super cool and yeah, really interesting as a way of sort of incrementally building up.
But again, we have no solid idea specifically yet. Like that's just something that I came up with. But yeah, hopefully soon we'll have all met and have like a proper idea to work off of.
Awesome. Thanks.
Luke, I don't know if how much you're looking at the chat, but Isabel's just put their project.
I think I got my microphone working.
Oh,
Okay.
both
Can
Dan
you
and
guys
I
hear me okay?
I did not notice. Yes, I did not notice that. We will respond to.
So several people in our group have an interest in found poetry or things like that kind of field. So we're going to be working with some material and some notes that we took in class to put the project together. But we also have a really wide range of technical abilities among people in the group, or computer, like electronic interest. From like I'm sort of a dabbler in it, and then Isabel does a lot of electronics, and then some of the others have less experience. So it's going to be interesting putting it together from that point of view. And I've also been having just so much trouble just with Zoom this week. It's been so frustrating. Anyway, so I don't really know what our technological requirements are going to be. Oh yeah, the other thing is that because we're quite geographically spaced out, it's been really hard to get everyone into the same space at the same time in order to meet, especially as we've all been really busy this week. So a lot of it hasn't taken form yet. And I don't really know what our technological requirements are going to be because we haven't had the chance to have that meeting and really figure out what modes of presentation we're going to use. Are we going to be doing pre-recorded material that we record separately and then assemble? Or are we going to be doing something that has a live component? I think right now both of those options are open.
Sounds good.
Julian, we are not recording people without permission. But we do take notes.
Oh, so that was a joke? Oh, okay.
I'm not going to use recorded samples of people without asking their permission. Don't worry. But
no, I'm not worried. I thought it'd be really funny, actually, but okay.
I mean, like, if you want me to.
Technically illegal in the ZFest space because we are a Massachusetts business, and it's illegal in Massachusetts.
And it's also just bad. Don't do it.
I don't know. Morally, I could go either way on that.
If you can't tell, like if you can't tell what the initial thing was, like, is that that's morally ambiguous.
That's like how people get away with
opinion.
sampling stuff if it's not long enough that it can be like unequivocally identified with a certain song. Like you can use a 500 millisecond sample. I forget who it was. Some electronic musician had a piece that was made of like thousands of samples from pop songs and stuff, but they were all really short.
That'd be cool, actually.
They weren't identifiable as such.
Wait, so what happens if you do that and they're not identifiable, but then you just put them all back together again?
I think it would be in your interest not to put them back together again if you're trying to avoid getting like sued for
like
live on different hard drives.
Like, is that the argument against it? Is it like if you can take a really small sample of something?
What about something?
What
about something where where it's just a group noise, where the individuals aren't identifiable? Like if you recorded applause as you were coming out on stage and then used it in the piece.
How about you put them together, but you put them together so it's not in the same order?
Could make a good piece.
That's granular synthesis right there.
But if you could play individual snippets on enough devices simultaneously so that the original product can be reproduced, then perhaps you have an argument in court.
That sounds like
you'd have a little synchronization issue.
Oh, what?
a little synchronization issue.
Yeah.
That's
It
just
also
a
sounds
shift.
like. Have you seen the every Star Wars movie simultaneously?
No, it sounds great.
Sounds horrifying. Wow.
Have you all heard every Scarlatti harpsichord sonata?
Oh, Jesus.
It's cursed. Do not look it up.
Oh no.
I'm
Wow.
looking it up.
Everyone
Oh,
immediately
no.
looks it up.
Oh. Can someone screen share this, please, when they play it?
I could.
Or like share
I
audio.
could. Mm,
Oh no.
I'm gonna turn down my headphones though.
This is cool.
that's a good idea. I think this is the one. Yes. Well, it's all of the solo harpsichord sonatas.
That is not the sound I was expecting.
Give me a second. Ugh. Sorry, it's not sharing yet.
Good God.
It's actually amazing how rhythmically undifferentiated that is. I'm surprised that it's so uniform. Like I would have thought there would be little, I guess if you average enough, it just becomes.
How many are there? I think is the question.
555.
Okay,
Yeah, that makes sense.
What
That
color
one
noise
hurt my
is that?
soul a
Is that
little.
a white noise or pink noise or
Scarlatti noise.
It's gonna be quite
Scarlatti noise.
shaped because he wrote in
Yeah.
some keys a lot more than others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's got to be quite tonal.
I also feel like, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, at least some of these are in like historical tunings. I think. I'm
Every
just
tuning
saying.
system simultaneously.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could pick that out. That there were at least several of the component tracks were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably like a lot of them, because, yeah. Otherwise,
it's
I'm
advanced
not gonna
tuning.
go there.
That was fun.
Apparently one of the harpsichord sonatas is longer than all the rest. So at the end, you just get a nice little
Ooh.
coda.
And that happens also with every Joanna Newsom song simultaneously.
It's like way longer.
Oh, somebody did every Sousa march simultaneously.
Oh my god.
Yikes. Well, does anyone have any other technical requests, I guess, at this point, if we've gone over the ensembles? I mean, I didn't really prepare anything specific. I just figured I'd ask what people want to talk about, and then if there's anything pressing, we can go over that, or just see what happens, I guess.
I'm good. I just dropped in to see what people were doing.
Yeah, same.
Thanks for dropping in. Seamus, did you get that patch figured out, that thing that was happening
Oh,
before?
I haven't bothered trying since.
Oh,
I
no
was-
worries. I was just curious if you had. I'm curious to know the solution. But
Can't figure it out. I'm gonna do some more patches this fall, so we'll see if the same thing comes up with any of them. It could be a my computer thing. I don't know.
yeah, that stuff can be very, very frustrating. That is actually one thing that I'll say in favor of Super Collider is that debugging can be a lot easier in that kind of a platform. Yeah, still not super nice, but it's easier to like methodically go through stuff.
Ooh, there's an interesting question in the chat.
Yeah, Isabel
From
has a
Isabel.
question about.
Oh,
project.
yes. Make a website where people can submit. Okay. So, well, you could sort of do something like that on Dropbox, I suppose. But one platform that's really nice for that kind of situation is frame.io. Some of you guys may be familiar with that, and we've been using it at work, but I've been thinking of switching over to it. Yeah, exactly, frame.io. It's offers all the same basic functionality to something like Dropbox, but it also has better functionality for organizing the files, letting people comment on them. You can play back video much better than Dropbox will let you play back videos, so people don't necessarily need to just download stuff. Like, they can interact more freely with the material on a web interface. And yeah, it's pretty good, I think, for that sort of collaborative work, or where you're trying to get different people to submit stuff and work on it and maybe share some of those results. Definitely recommend it. I think it's free with like really limited space, but at least to try out. So, and maybe the space will end up being enough if you're not recording a lot of really large files. So. Timings to match with the gist. Yeah, so like if you put up a video on Frame.io, nice thing you can do, if you have any video, when you play it back in the timeline, you can make time-stamped comments in a video that are visible to you or to other people that you share the content with. So that can be really useful if that's what you mean.
Oh, sorry, I was watching Love Live videos because I looked up the Love Live video of every Love Live song playing at the same time.
I'm starting to feel like that might be your favorite anime.
No, it's not.
It's not.
I actually never watched the Love Live anime.
Okay.
I watched episode 1 and I was like, this isn't that good. I played the game for like a solid 3 years and 3 months. So
Okay.
it took up a lot of my life, and I was really good at it too.
Okay.
And I saved up for a very long time. I saved up in-game currency for a long time and got the Conductor Hanao card, where she's a conductor.
Cute.
So yeah, and then I got the Conductor Hanao card, and I was like, what do I do now? And I just stopped playing. So it was also around the time my life got really busy in senior year. So for those who don't know, it's one of the most ambitious franchises in history because it's a crossover between one of the largest anime magazines, one of the largest anime production studios, and one of the largest music production companies. So they created this gigantic thing where like it is like music and like an anime and like comics and video games and stuff like that. It's very big. No one actually thinks the anime are that good though. Apparently the new one is good. But the music is top notch. It's super hyped. A lot of bangers. Wow, technology. Do you think I can advance past the beep bop boop stage in these next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, what would you ideally want to produce, do you think? Like something with live input? Or I would just think about that a little bit just to narrow it down as far as where to put your energy. Mm-hmm. So like if you decided, oh, I want to do a thing with like cello or Arhu as the input and like do live processing, that would be like sort of one direction to make a patch in, or you could, do something else. But if you try to bite off too much, then it would get a little crazy. But I think if you give yourself like a pretty defined project, it's not too bad. Yeah, especially if you use the buffers. Like if you're playing back samples, or you're playing back, or manipulating live input and then doing something to it, you can get really cool results relatively quickly. It's definitely, if you're just doing really, really low level, like granular synthesis, like sample level manipulation of sounds, or building up electronic textures, there's cool stuff, but it's going to take probably a little while longer to get a texture that's super interesting. So
Controversial take for you, Julian. I'm still kind of new to Reaper. I was hoping to get some more information through our one general meeting, but that didn't quite go as expected. But I've been using Audacity just because it's super user friendly for a lot of stuff, and there's a ton of effects you can just kind of mess around with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's pretty easy to just be like, oh, what's this thing do? What does this thing do? And just kind of play it back and just kind of mess around with it. Things I would recommend messing around with acoustic things are like pulse stretch, echo, reverb, distortion, just as a few to kind of start out with.
Yeah, I did use a lot of Audacity back in the day. Now I'm on Reaper because I'm trying to be a cool kid, but I might go back and just do the easy, because you can just like highlight a clip of your sound and just click the tool and just do it, which is very nice. So
I don't know. I still feel like I'm having trouble getting used to using Reaper and its interface. I've done a lot of work on computers with different kinds of interfaces through call center work and stuff like that, and usually I'm able to kind of navigate my way around a system pretty quickly after like a week or two of working with it, but I feel like Reaper's a bit more of a struggle for me.
Reaper is kind of arcane. I agree.
Does anyone want to take a look at anything? I'm happy to pull it up quickly, and we can, not to put anyone on the spot, but if that would be helpful.
I guess this is a question. So in Audacity, you can just highlight stuff and then just do it. In Reaper, you can't quite do that. You have to like put a VST on it or something.
No,
right?
well, yes and no. So the typical way that you apply effects in Reaper would be to have the track, and you put the VST plugin into the track, and then everything that's in that track is now being manipulated by that plugin. Mm-hmm. But you can also do what they call per clip effects. So there's a way that's also pretty straightforward. When you have audio clip like in the timeline, you can add a plugin onto just that audio clip, and then that's an even more direct way of applying the processing. Although you still do have like the whole, window with all the parameters. Like it's not like a one-click thing. You'll get something, but like, in Audacity, it's more of like a just really, really straightforward, like I'm going to put this thing on this thing, and now I hear what it sounds like. And on Reaper, if you did that approach, you could find the clip you want to manipulate and say, oh, I'm going to put a reverb on that, and like right click on it and, put a reverb plugin just onto that clip. So you're not messing with the tracks or anything, but, to get it sounding the way you want, you still probably do want to open it up and play with some of the settings.
Okay.
But that's an
per clip effects. That's good to know, because I figured out how to do envelopes. That was nice.
Well, that's great.
But
that's nothing to sneeze at. Although I don't know why anyone would sneeze at anything. That's such a weird expression. What does that even mean?
Achoo.
But yeah.
I mean, now I think it's a little more open.
It's assault.
Fair enough.
Rough. I think part of my hang up on electronics is that I don't listen to a lot of classical music that uses electronics. I think it's like Kate Soper, and then most of my taste is usually like older or more acoustic. So I just gotta, or like, I guess in pop songs and stuff like that, and non-classical genres, it's, electronics are all over, but then that's not the kind of music that I am doing right now. So
I think also there's a really big difference between, like if you have a piece where there's sort of traditionally recorded acoustic elements that have, really balanced timbre, and like there isn't a ton of crazy EQ or whatever, and like it's nice acoustics, and then you have that, and then you have like an electronic sound, it really makes it obvious that it's, electronic sound in a sort of like classical new music context. But if it's like a pop song, we're just so used to that sound world that like, yeah, maybe there's tons of reverb on the vocalist, and maybe there's like some crazy EQ on the keyboards and it doesn't sound like a normal keyboard, but you just sort of accept it and don't really overthink what's being done to the sound the same way, for sure. But I still think a lot of the early electronic music is among the best, like not necessarily just aesthetics aside, just the way it sounds is so good. Like the early Stockhausen stuff and some of the early tape music, the way that they produced that, even though the sound sources are electronic, they were doing things like, playing back certain passages with like rotating speaker baffles or like miking the sounds in a space to create a sense of space rather than, because they didn't have like a reverb plugin, obviously. And just all that kind of stuff, I think is really, really amazing as far as thinking of it as being like really on par with acoustic music in terms of sound quality and not just like this super dry thing that's yeah.
Okay. Nicole Lizet. No.
Nicole Lizet is a Canadian composer who works a lot with electronics and glitched video and stuff like that. She was also an alumni of my undergrad, so I heard a lot of her music at like our university's new music festivals and stuff. There's a lot of stuff with like acoustic instruments and like glitched electronics, turntables. Oh, that's interesting, Shannon. Do you remember what that piece was called? I actually really want to look that up. I haven't listened to Nicole Lizet in so long, and I want to.
Something like Arcadia or something like that.
That sounds like something Nicole Lizet would write.
It had like a video background with like video game, like arcade game, like
that sounds about right. Yeah. Two I would recommend are the Hitchcock Etudes and the Kubrick Etudes. They are pieces for piano and glitched video. And there's also the Tarantino Etudes. But yeah, Hitchcock.
Nice.
Yeah, those
Tarantino
are
Etudes. Oh my gosh, I just shot Marvin in the face. Why'd you shoot Marvin in the face? I don't know.
Oh, another one that I really like is called Book Burners. It's for electric cello and DJ turntables.
Okay, cool. Nice. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Oh. Here they are. Cool. I'll listen to that later. Yeah, I think Stacy would really like Nicole Lizet as well. Especially the Hitchcock and Tarantino. No, Hitchcock, Tarantino, and Kubrick.
What's everyone doing this Thursday?
I
have no plans whatsoever.